cost of non-productive days is not a new term, it's an old term, and we will discuss a couple of the people that had looked into this over the years, especially Leman was one of the first ones to talk about non-productive days. As Mike said, our team in Canada has been doing some visits to farm, and we were surprised that a lot of our customers don't know how much it costs for a irregular sow or a sow aborting or a sow that is not catch on heat. So those are big dollars when we start looking into these different numbers, and the more sows we have in that scenario, the more expensive it will be. So my presentation today is reviewing a couple of data sets, a couple of analyses, just to point fingers at how much it costs a irregular return, a sow that is not getting pregnant because she's missed it, or an irregular return. We live in a very tough time. The swine industry is a risky industry to be in, and just the last few days we have seen this in the news, making it to important newspapers. In the last couple of days, we have seen two of our largest producers in Canada going through economical problems. The headlines of this news: feed costs push Canada's Big Skies Farms pigs, pig farm into receivership, Puriton files bankruptcy. So these two large producers, these guys here were producing 500,000 pigs a year, around 35,000 sows. These guys here, 40,000 sows, around 1 million pigs in the market. So two of our largest customers, our largest producers, having problems. That means we live in a very tough, very thin industry with no room for mistakes. Another headline, kind of sad to see, loss could hit $50 a pig for Manitoba hog farmers. 1,300 pigs were found on a farm, distressed and not well nourished. So all this makes you worried and make you see how important it is to do the things properly and to fine-tune our farms. And the last news, just recently, Smithfield's having losses compared to previous year of 25%. So we live in a very tough time, and we need to make the things work properly. So what is a non-productive day? A non-productive day is the time when a sow is doing something else. It's not pregnant, it's not lactating, God knows what she's doing in the barn. It's not having a nice time like this guy here, but she's costing you money. And on top of that, she's not only costing money, you are not making money out of her. So that's a big one, opportunity cost loss through a sow that is not pregnant or lactating. These productive days of a sow during the year, as I mentioned, is gestation, 115 plus minus few days. Lactation, 21 plus minus few days. Those are the only times where she's a productive animal. The rest of the time, we are putting money into her. So the production costs will increase, feed costs, fixed cost, labor, and interest every time this animal is not pregnant. As I mentioned before, Leman was the first one to grasp the concept of non-productive days. This was back 20 years ago, and Al published this on a magazine, the Veterinary Clinics of North America. And in his paper, he was mentioning that the concept for excellence in production back 20 years ago was reducing non-productive days, increasing litter size, and decreasing pre-weaning mortality. Today, we need to look at the things differently. We need to look at, yes, litter per sow per year is still important. Decreasing non-productive days is a key part. But now we need to look at the sows. How many of these piglets make it to the slaughterhouse? How many kilograms of pork we are producing? And how many of these pigs that they were born reach the slaughterhouse? We're producing larger litters. And the key is how much revenue we're making out of these litters. There are limitants to increasing the litters per sow per year. We have the lactation length. We've been playing with this. We know it's a mistake going below 21 days. We have farms already set up for that.
we cannot change much lactation length. We see now lactation lengths increasing to 28 days and so on and so forth. And non-productive days, they're going to affect the way you use your barns, the way you perform, and the profitability of your farms. This paper here from Dr. Koketsku from the University of Minnesota show what are the components for a non-productive day. Basically, I will talk about the 4 concepts that apply to sows. I will not be looking into the gilt here. I will just briefly mention it. But these intervals that Dr. Koketsku mentioned are a sow that is weaned, not pregnant, and needs to be culled, weaning to first service interval, sow first service to pregnancy, and sow first service to culling. All these impact your non-productive days. As I mentioned before, the productivity of the sow will depend on the liters produced per sow per year. This is limited depending on the number of days from weaning to estrus. It varies. It will be variable from season to season. We well known summer months could be a problem. P1 sows will add to the problem. Older sows. How long is this lactation length, as I mentioned? Different breeds, genetics. Health is a really important problem that we have, creating non-productive days, and the management. So in this corner here, I have how much it will cost. And this cost of $2, $3 per day per sow, it may be a little bit irrelevant today with the prices we are seeing with corn. But back a couple of months ago, a Misc heat will be costing this farm $42. Just $42 extra because we didn't catch a sow in heat. An irregular return, $75 to $100. A regular return, as I mentioned, same as Misc heat, $42 to $63. So the more sows we have in these cases, the more money the farm is losing. We took the liberty to use this data set from Rich and Ketchum from Swine Management Service in Nebraska. And the reason we use this data set is because a very nice data set. It was published in September 2010. And these guys here, 773 farms, are showing a number close to the number of sows we have in Canada, 1.3 million. So when we look at the difference on these farms, here on the top of the table we have the average of all these 773 farms. From there, he breaks the data into the top 10 percentile, the top 25th percentile, the median, and the lower producers. From this, the spread between the good farms and the bad farms, we can see there's 7 pigs per year, and we can see there's roughly 17, 18 days difference on non-productive days. So between the best farms and the worst farms in this data set, there is 7 pigs and 17 days difference. Same authors published on the National Hog Farmer Review last couple of weeks, the same data set now for 2012. So as we can see, 793 farms still on the data set, 1.3 million sows, as I mentioned before. And we can see the spread between the good farms and the bad farms is increasing. So this number is creeping up. Lower producing farms are having more non-productive days, increasing their costs, and producing less piglets. And for this data set, we increased 1 more pig. We had 7 pigs before, between the best and the worst. Now it's 8 and 38 days. So that's creeping up, and that's something to keep in mind. The lower bottom the producers, the higher their costs they're incurring. This is just a graphical of the same data set. As we can see here on the y-axis, the y-axis, we have number of pigs weaned, on the other side with number of days, open days on a farm, and the same data set, the top producers, the low producers, and the median and average here. So as we can see, there's a proportion as the number of non-productive days increase, the production of pigs decrease, and this is a linear effect we can see. So on these farms, the longer these sows are not pregnant and producing, the less piglets they will produce and the higher the cost. So there are different ways to look at this. We can see the cost of production, which includes the feed, medicines, veterinary costs, facilities, labor, so on and so forth. And these costs, just the raw costs, will be these production costs divided by the number of sows, divided by 365 days of the year. That will be the cost, the roughly cost of a sow per day. Or we can look at differently and look at the break-even cost of pig by the time of pigs are weaned, divided by 365 days. So there are two different ways of looking at things. And today, the way we do business, I think we need to look also what's our break-even cost to try to be above the water. Okay. I took the liberty to use these numbers from Juan Carlos Pinilla presentation in Denver 2012. Juan Carlos he summarized the different costs for a sow. He was talking about skipping a heat, but I'm using his numbers just to show the difference that 6 months ago, the cost we have on a low-cost farm, 1.96 per sow per day, compared to a high-cost farm that was roughly $210 per day per sow. Just 6 months ago, and the difference now, I'm using the reference from Ketchum and Riggs last couple of weeks, a low-cost feed ration, $314, high-cost, $416. So now the spread is $100. And you can see the difference between the cost per day now for a low-cost farm is what we used to be a high-cost farm just 6 months ago. So very fine line between how the things can change in 6 months. I took the same data set and we are comparing the top 25 percentile, the average of the farms, and the low 25 percentile from the data set I showed you a couple slides ago. We look at here the gestation, 115 days, lactation, 21 days, open days for the top 25th percentile of producers, 10.5 days, compared to 20 on the low-producing farms. The days per cycle, 146 compared to 164. Liters per sow per year, 2.4 against 2.2. Non-productive days, 30 days difference. And the cost of non-productive days, $60 higher for a low-producing farm. So very, very striking numbers. When you just start playing with it, it shows you that there's little room for mistakes. And in another hand, there is a very important message here that we need to make sure these sows are getting pregnant. They come back in heat at the right time. We have good heat checking and so on. The difference between the top 25th and the bottom 25th was 0.2 liters per sow per year, a difference of 30 days, as I mentioned before. A non-productive days cost difference of $60 and difference of 7 less pigs produced on the bottom 25th percentile. Now, when we look at the average farms, and we compare the average farms against the lowest farms, we can see the difference are not that huge. But 10 days difference on the cycle, 0.1 difference on liters per sow per year, 20 days difference on non-productive days per year, and roughly about $50 difference between the average farm and the low-producing farm. So every time we have an increase on a non-productive day, we have a decrease in 0.07 pigs per sow per year, and we will have a decrease for every 10 days of half a pig. So these are just numbers to keep in mind. You have them on your proceedings, and it's very, very nice exercise to go through your data and look at how much is costing in your own farm. There is a big difference between having a guy, a gilt or a sow that is pregnant with a neighbor that is not producing anything, well, a lot of shit, you can see, and she's just eating away money and not producing. So an opportunity cost, as we have been mentioning, is that money that this guy is not producing for you because she's not producing anything. So the way I look at the numbers for this are the pigs weaned per sow per year times the cost of these pigs divided by the production, the productive days, which I mentioned are 115 plus 20, roughly twice a year, 320 days. I'm using a pig value of a wean pig of $37. That has been up and down, and it's hard to track anymore. But I will use an average of $37 per wean pig. So using these numbers and the average farm, 43 non-productive days, we have that an opportunity cost, a non-productive days, $290 for this farm compared to 0 of sow non-producing piglets. The other way to look at this is looking at the production days on a farm divided by the time that she's productive. So 365 minus 43, the non-productive days, divided by 135. And as we can see, every time we increase non-productive days by 1, we are decreasing 0.01 liters per sow per year. When we look at the opportunity cost, how much is this sow on top of the feed cost and all the stuff we've been mentioning, how much she's lacking to produce every day? We look at the liters per sow per year difference times the pigs weaned per liter times the value of that pig. That will give you the value of the non-productive days. For the same example, the same average farm and the $37 cost of the weaned pig, we can see that a decrease on 0.01 liters per sow per year times the piglets times the cost, this sow is costing you 3.80 non-productive days lack of revenue. So the opportunity cost we are losing for a sow not getting pregnant, it's quite significant. Not only what we spend on her, but what you are losing to gain from this guy. The other way to look at this is to look at how many piglets she's not producing. And as I said before, an increase in one non-productive day will decrease 0.07 liters per sow per year. That's roughly about 0.7 piglets per sow per year. All these are in your proceedings. It's just to bring your attention, there is another seminar that's called Crunching the Numbers. You can play with your data and see how much it costs to you. This table is showing that this is also important on times where the price of the pigs go down. As we can see on this column here, I have the value of the weaned pig from $30 to $40, and the pigs per sow per year, 20, 22, 24, 26, and a high-producing sow, 30 pigs per sow per year, which we heard from the genetic companies is possible to do. So when we look at the 30 pigs per sow per year sow and a low revenue of $30 compared to a high cost of a weaned pig of $40, $3.75. So the higher, the better the sow, the high producing sow will cost you more on non-productive days and opportunity loss compared to a low producing sow on a low margin. So we have here the cost of the weaned pig, the number of pigs produced per sow. This sow is producing 20 pigs per year. We can see 1.80 opportunity cost loss compared to a sow that is producing 30 pigs on a $40 cost of weaned pig. We are losing $3.75. So it's a huge spread, and the better the sow, the higher the losses. I mentioned before, I will just touch briefly on the gilts. This paper from Tom Rick in 2010 is pretty good. Talks about the cost of gilts. And he's showing his data that 30 days difference between first service on a gilt could make a lot of losses. Could mean a lot of cost for you. He showed here, we will use in this example 240 days for first service compared to a sow that was there 210 days. You can see the difference on additional cost of feed is $25. And this was way back when we were paying 80 cents per day per gilt. Now this, as I mentioned, is unfortunately changing, plus the housing, interest, and so on. So over the productive life of this gilt, this sow, there is an extra 50 cents cost added to these piglets. The way he came up to this is based on what George said a couple of years ago. It takes 3 parities for a gilt to pay all how much we invest on her. So based on these 3 parities, we can see that adding a 50 cent per weaned pig is adding a lot of cost. Now for my last few slides, I would like to bring to your attention 2 of our products. Our products are meant to be used as a tool. Many farms, and I hear this very often, they say PG600 doesn't work, Regumate doesn't work, and they forget that this guy is in the house, hopefully as ugly, as smelly as this guy, and we need to use hormones priming with boar exposure. If we hope to get a gilt, a shot of PG600 and get that shot to work without boar exposure, that's a big mistake. And unfortunately, that's a common mistake our farmers do. So we need priming of boars before we use either PG600 or Regumate. So these tools could help you to decrease non-productive days. So this is the most important tool, and it's costing you feed as well, so might as well use it. Back in my days in Minitube, we did a survey of farms, and we started looking at farms using hormones. And the farms using hormones were the farms with poor performance. Lower farrowing rates, lower farrowing rate farms were using more hormones compared to high-performing farms. This is quite striking, but they want the hormones to fix the problems instead of using it as a tool. As I mentioned, hormones and our products are a tool. They are not meant to be used just without controlling everybody. So we look at here 3 columns. The best sow. This is a sow that will come back on heat roughly 6 days after weaning, and she will do that 2.5 times during the year. She will be having open days, 14 open days, compared to a sow. I put here skip a heat, but we can compare this to a sow that did not catch up or had a regular return, or we missed the heat. We can see the difference in open days. It's roughly 20 days. Farrowing per sow per year, 2.4 against 2.1 on this animal. Pigs wean, almost 3 pigs difference. So if we were to use Regumate, and this is based on a paper presented at the IPBS by Dr. Sodi, she used Regumate before weaning on different sows. She used it at different rates, 3, 7, 14 days. I will use for our sample 3 days. If you were to feed this sow Regumate, say this sow here was not ready, had a negative energy balance, had some uterus problems, had an infection, she was not ready to conceive, and she repeat. Well, if we look at that sow, we know she's going to be a problem. She won't catch. We better stop her from cycling. And the way she did this on this paper is by feeding 1 day before weaning and 2 extra days. So 3 days I'm using for this example. And we can see the difference by doing just this on this sow is 0.2 liters per sow per year and a difference of 2 pigs. So the investment these guys did, or this example on that particular sow by feeding Regumate, it paid off at the end. And we will look at the numbers here. This is the opportunity sale, again, $35. So our best sow is producing $854 compared to a sow that skipped a heat or did not catch. That's a big difference, $766, $88 difference of opportunity cost. Compared to a sow that was fed Regumate only for 3 days, the losses are not that significant, and the cost of Regumate feeding this sow, it brings some money back. So the return or investment of just feeding Regumate for 3 days to this sow was 3.2. So pretty good investment, and stop this sow from going all the way 21 days compared to 3 extra days. On the other hand, when we look at PG600 as treatment of P1 sows, say for summer infertility, we have again our best sow here compared to a sow that will have a longer weaning to estrus interval, cost roughly about $6 to $7 of PG600 shot. It will save you $26 of opportunity cost. So there are 2 tools that can be used to decrease your losses, and use it at the right time could help you to save money. I include this slide here. I have a son of a friend of mine that is a surfer and went to Australia for last summer. And I showed to him this picture, and he said, well, I know these guys are there. I know what I'm doing. Surfing is a risky sport. We know those guys there. In some places, there's even crocodiles at the same time. But I try not to do mistakes. So I put this picture here just to refer how fragile is this industry we are. Any mistake could be costly, and any open sow, any sow that is not productive, is costing a lot of money.